You want it? And then, from here, just join from your laptop.
Yeah, oh yeah, here, here, bear with us.
When you can you move,
Nike.
you're a participant.
Or we can have to bring.
Actually, that might be a better way. So there's 3 people in the waiting. 3 letters.
Not yet.
See, chocolate, seal.
So let me just see what we have here. So, things I'm gonna want to do.
Markedly cooler today, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like 20 degrees cooler today. Camera control. Okay, so we started. We've got beauty, we've got kind of the cameras. That you would fit. We have this one.
Did you want some of the bigger portion cups?
There may be some in the.
No, because these just have the coffee.
Coffee filters.
I'll get you some of the bigger.
Thank you. Who's the big one? Yeah. That.
Yeah.
Good angle?
Yeah.
Got this one. The problem with these in front of the screen, it's like they're not very. We do have this one.
Don't forget you have the. There.
Yeah. Steve, where is the third one gonna be? Is this one gonna be running too? The third what? Tube. I mean, I think you have that one going. Are we gonna have 4 tubes? Yeah.
Well, I thought I'd leave that until we got done with the,
Yeah.
yeah, I brought the tables out so that, well, I'll use the tables for the drawing out.
Yeah. Right? No. Little ears could be filming it this way and then also seeing all of the screens.
Oh, okay.
The little.
If you wanna put it somewhere else,
So
I'm okay with
yeah, I'm
that.
wondering, maybe we put it. But, let's see, we have. Actually, we only have. Guess we could put it. It's gonna need to be this camera. So. Guess it's gonna, maybe we. I was wondering if we just do it like, well, that one, grab that one. How pretty it is, we put it on this table. Right?
Yeah, that's right. Oops.
You know? See how that works. Does that grab it?
Do an assembly, yeah, that's easy.
Or even like this.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, then we've got a.
And you need power.
Which we have right down.
We need a screwdriver to get at the. I need power.
Those ones are so cute.
I didn't.
Make it.
We may end up with something on public lights.
Chris, there's some weird things. These are fun to just fly on their own.
Yeah.
I wonder what happened if we tried to float the little paper origami cubes,
Oh, yeah,
like those would fly.
yeah, probably. Sure. Google guys make everything better.
There, welcome.
Good morning.
Good
morning.
morning.
Come on in.
Hello. Okay, so I'm.
You're the one that
Are you gonna
we
be
printed up?
Yes,
I am turning right now.
Do I supposed to?
Oh, yeah, okay, then I'm inside, okay?
Okay, so. Okay.
Pues no.
No. Chavi?
Japanese? You like it?
Oh, nice of it, yeah. They figured it out. No, 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 this time is the-
Is it the sushi place you're gonna talking about?
Dame una.
And if the feels back, so we can make copies. I didn't know the same thing.
Oh. Okay. We actually, we made enough for everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure if you guys have lunch or meetings, you can go on, but you've got some snacks and some water over there.
Help yourselves.
Well, welcome, everybody. We're glad that you're here. Thanks for joining us here at Ames. Thank you for joining us online. We're excited to be able to share this time together. It's great to see you all. Today's session will be focused on our vertical wind tube interactive exhibit. And we're just about ready to kind of get up and running. So we'll just get started here probably in a minute. We've got a few more people who are just coming online, and we'll get started in just a minute.
Oh, we actually have
Did you
one.
grab some,
Thank you.
grab some snacks over there too, help yourselves.
Thank you.
Oh, you're right. And I have one of those.
Yeah.
That's smart.
That's it.
So smart.
I'm so.
Cute.
Oh. That's cool.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Again, welcome everybody. It's great to see you all. We're excited to be gathered together for a session today that will be interactive and hands-on, focused on a vertical wind tube interactive exhibit. Maybe in the waiting room on the computer there that might just be joining us. So today, we're gonna be using a few resources and kind of going through the exhibit guide that we've developed as a part of Count, Play, Explore family and community engagement. And then we're gonna have some time today to talk a little bit about what is a wind tube. We have actually, if you're here with us at Ames, we have one that's actually going in the corner here. We have some others that will be firing up here in a little bit as well. And then we're gonna spend some time talking about guided exhibit building. So we're going to help you think through how to put something like this together and how to construct a wind tube with some materials that we'll talk about and some suggestions that we've had. We've built a lot of these different wind tubes and tried them out in different places. And I see Claudia's with us online, and we've been doing this with EPU. And so we're excited to hear a little bit about maybe some of your experiences and how that's been going. Then we'll have some time to play with the wind tubes, and we'll have some very focused exploration around what kinds of things will fly in the wind tube and that sort of thing. We'll then conclude our day today with some discussion and a little bit of Q&A if you have questions about the tube and how to install that, or some ways that you can use this to support family engagement in your organization. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But just to kind of get us started today, would like to just think a little bit about kind of this whole idea of what we're really sort of after here. So I have just a question to kind of spark your thoughts today, to spark your engagement. If you're in the room, you might want to have a little partner conversation. If you're online, we encourage you to put some things in the chat. The question is, how do families engage in playful ways together? So what have you seen, maybe you and your own family, how do families engage in playful ways together? So I'm gonna give everyone about a minute to talk about it here in the room or to post an idea in the chat, and let's get our gears going around family engagement, particularly in family play. How do families play together? So 1 minute to talk about it. Ready, go.
Well, I can tell you what I've seen. So,
And a lot of my families don't play. They don't have time management is always an issue. So like when I sit down and do my family conferences, one of the things I like to suggest are some tasks that I do with my young child at home too, because I don't ever have time either. So I incorporate my child in cooking projects. And she doesn't know how to read the recipe, so I'll follow along with her. So we're getting some language and literacy going on, some mathematics, and then the exploration, which is the science of the making of the product, because it starts off as one product and then it finishes off as another product. Another example is just helping with basic household things, but turning it into like an experiment of some sort or play. So like building, like a lot of teachers are always worried about hammer and nails. That's a great area to have in a classroom, is hammer and nails supervised, because you're teaching early architectural skills to the children. Just doing those daily activities, but turning it into something fun. So example of that is I had to put my TV stand together. I started all the nails and I had my daughter finish nailing them, like hammering them in. So the balancing wasn't there. She helped me balance the first, like putting it in and hitting. So there's a risk of my finger getting hurt, but the rest she hammered them in. I had to be not angry about cooking it.
different
Yeah.
stuff.
For my family in particular, we do like board games.
Oh, yes.
Or.
All right, well, let's come back together. Anybody in the room would like to share a little bit about how families engage in playful ways together?
Or like I told him, for example, my family would play card games or board games.
Card games, board games, so sort of like a structured kind of a game. Great. Other thoughts?
Dramatic play, like tea parties, dress up.
Nice. So using imagination and sort of that kind of dramatic play, maybe there's roles that they're taking. Great. Other thoughts about family play?
I think when it's fun, you know, we make it fun where everybody can participate. And also when there's a prize, maybe at the end, family really engage.
Yeah.
I was saying, I don't know how to like turn one word into it, but I guess like turning family routines into experimental or playful experiences.
That's great. I think there was a couple folks in the chat who sort of hit some of the same ideas, family routines. Claudia mentioned families include it during their daily routines, diaper change, singing songs, or adding new things to the bathtub. So kind of those ideas,
I'm an
right?
infant teacher, I know that.
Yeah.
Did that.
Naomi says going outside, backyard or park, being playful during daily routines. Allison says during activities like cooking or shopping or cleaning, you can engage in playful ways. Other thoughts or ideas to share out? Hey, wonderful. Yeah, playing at the park, dancing together, playing with toys, day-to-day activities. I think it's really interesting to see how we really kind of pointed out here that it can be a very structured activity. It could also be kind of something that's less structured during the daily routines. I know we'll talk a little bit more about that play. And I know Steve's got some thoughts around sort of how we might think about that going forward as well. Okay, so we're gonna now take a little bit of time to talk a little bit about 4 particular kinds of family dimensions that that you might just sort of pay attention to today as we explore the wind tube. One is really about facilitation, so it's kind of like getting parents involved in these kinds of exhibits. And as you know, like we did with the light and the shadow, there are particular roles that a parent can play or a caregiver can play. As we did the light and shadow exhibit, you might have remembered that there were some books there that the parent could be reading or a story that could connect to it. The parent could also sort of help tell a story around what was happening in that light and shadow play activity. There's also relationships that are built through family interaction. And so this little graphic here really sort of talks a little bit about how on one side it can sometimes feel unbalanced, right? Where if the parent is doing all, or the caregiver is doing all of the work or the play, or really sort of guiding it, versus if it's balanced on the right side, we can kind of see there's really more of a give and take. Adult and child are establishing relationships, and there's this balance in the partnership where the adult and the child are playing closely together or designing something, and then also where they're really kind of exploring their different ideas together. So as we explore this wind tube, and as perhaps you've explored the light and shadow, we encourage you to think about ways that we could really create opportunities for that balance, for that give and take, where parents or caregivers or adults are also contributing to the activity in ways, and children are contributing, and there's really a give and take. There's a real balance, a shared responsibility. What we've seen with the wind tubes is that adults love to play with the wind tubes. What we've seen with children is children love to play with the wind tubes. And so it's a wonderful kind of activity that is, it's less about the adult saying, okay, you can go play with that, have fun, I'll be over here. It's the adults in there with the child saying, what if we tried this? And there's a lot of back and forth, a lot of balance to that kind of partnership that we intend to see with this kind of exhibit. And it doesn't have to be just this exhibit. As you know, it can be a lot of different kinds of activities, different kinds of exhibits. Just a couple more details here. Online, you will, Naomi, thank you. Naomi sent out a link to the resources for this. Throughout today, we'll be using this vertical wind tube interactive exhibit guide, which you can print out. You can also just access the PDF in the resource folder for the exhibits. So this is available to everybody. It's pretty long, it's 18 pages. So we plan to go through it today little by little and share some of the highlights of it. But we encourage you to sort of look through and see how you might be able to implement something like the wind tube in your own setting. Now, we also want to just sort of provide an introduction to say, this is just one way to do this. And there are many different kinds of ways to implement something like this. This is a suggested guide. You may find things that you like better or ways that you want to do this better or more materials to offer. So we encourage you to make this your own. You don't have to follow this letter by letter. It's a guide and it's a suggested way to implement the wind tube. So to talk a little bit more about wind tubes and to talk a little bit more about play, kind of why we think this is a fun thing, and to then kind of get us into the building a little bit, I'm going to turn it over to Steve Pauls, and Steve is going to take us through the next bit. Steve, this is a good spot right here.
Right there, I was trying to figure that out. See if I can stay in this one spot. As Paul alluded to, we here at Ames are very interested in play, and we're interested in play of children as adults as well. And play is often thought of as a universal activity. It's a place where children have an inherent desire and capacity to play. And it's where they begin to learn. It's where the children learn, and I'm not telling you anything new about that. It's fascinating to watch children and their different play dynamics, and it can be multifaceted. The play can be complex, can involve language, interactions, play on many levels. Play can be defined as being very creative, very imaginative. It's often characterized by a high level of personal engagement, providing an intrinsic motivation to continue to return to the spiral back to that play or that activity over and over again, right? It brings them back. It's also plays, it's active, it's fluid, it's personal, right? And in a group setting, there's lots of language, vocabulary, communication, small and large group dynamics. This play is a very rich environment. So what we've tried to do is find those activities where we can play. And as Paul had mentioned, play with children can play with a wind tube, adults can play with a wind tube, children, adults can play together with the wind tube. And we have found that this type of device or activity has a wide range of ability of attracting kids and promoting play of all ages. And whether we call it play or tinkering or making or inventing or creating, we're interested in aims and where those ideas overlap and where they overlap with STEAM, the science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. So WinTube isn't a new idea. It is something that if you go to a science museum of any size, most likely they have a wind tube. And here are some pictures of different wind tubes that are found in different places around the United States or the world. And they come in many different shapes and sizes. Exploratorium has done a lot with wind tubes and with wind type of activities. They have wind tube, several examples are from the Exploratorium here. If you've been to Moxie, which is has anybody been to Moxie? It's the science museum down in Santa Barbara. It's a fun museum if you're ever in that area. They have some wind tubes that are actually mobile. They're battery powered and they can take out to different sites, and there are kids. There's always a half a dozen kids that are there playing with them. And they have 3 or 4 of them. So it's just some examples of settings where you find different wind tubes and how kids play with them. You can see the different objects that they're putting into the wind tubes. What we found though is that if you go and do a Google search on wind tubes, you'll find that they're anywhere range between $20,000 to $30,000 to buy a wind tube. That's a little bit out of my budget. I don't know about yours. So we tried to find a way of creating an exploratorium as well, of creating a wind tube that is easy to build, uses common materials, and is at a price point that you can build those. And that's what we've tried to do here. So we're going to look at our wind tubes today. Essentially, the wind tube uses a household fan. It uses embroidery hoops and some kind of clear acetate, so we can see through those, all of those which are relatively available. By introducing lightweight materials into the tube, participants can watch objects of their creation float, fly, or dance within that wind tube, which is always very attractive to them. They can use the wind tube as a playful, inventive way to explore science type of ideas such as airflow, drag, symmetry, turbulence, air resistance, gravity. They can build objects of their own design and change those designs, add things, subtract things, to look at the iteration process and find objects that will float higher in the wind tube, lower in the wind tube, blow out of the wind tube. I've done a lot of playing with wind tubes and I still am not tired of it yet. So I have one installed in my house, just in case I come up with an idea. So as I said, these wind tubes are a powerful way to look at STEAM and STEAM ideas. Younger kids enjoy just putting things into wind. Yes?
Did you help design the wind tube at the Discovery Center?
At the Discovery Center. There's one here in Winery.
Yeah.
I did not know. No.
Yeah, that's so when I seen this, I was just thinking like, cause you said you could do this or that. It has like compartments that you can close and that stops the object and like you open it, like we played for like the whole hour there.
Okay.
So I thought maybe you helped them.
That's gonna be my next stop. I'm gonna have to go see what they've done.
Wall of tube.
Yeah, they have the tubes on the wall that
Yeah.
blow through. Yes, yeah, Moxie has one of those too. Kids love that,
Yeah.
blowing the scarves through.
My child wanted me to see if she'd go through it, but I was like, you don't fit that.
See, now you're thinking, what wheel goes in there? So what we're going to do is we're gonna walk through this process of building a wind tube. It's too long a process to have us all build wind tubes in this setting, in this short amount of time that we have. But we're gonna show you the basic ideas and some of the places where there might be, might trip you up. And we try to nicely walk you through that in the guide, but we're also here at any time you have a question or you want to build a wind tube, we're here as your resource as well. You have to do that.
Yeah, excellent. So thanks, Steve. And one of the things that that we'll just highlight in the guide is that on pages 2 and 3, there's some basic information about setting up your wind tube. You need to have a kind of an open space. It can go on the floor, but it could also go on a table if it's a smaller size. There are a variety of different sizes of wind tubes that you can make, small, medium, large. We're going to be helping you to make the small tube. And because it's kind of, it's a nice size and you're able to sort of move that around. But if you also would like to make a large tube, we, as Steve said, we'll be available to help you with that. Some of the materials are slightly different. The process is pretty much the same, but just requires a few different kinds of materials.
The small tube is around $45 to $50 in cost for an individual tube. The large one is just a little over $200, something like that.
So you can kind of think about that in terms of helping to make your decision there. On page 2, you can see some of the materials that we'll use, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go forward. And as well, the idea that you can also create things to put into the tube by connecting different materials. You can make something and try that out. But we'll be going into a little bit more detail about building the tube now. And so we'll be looking at pages 4 and 5 of the guide.
We have a question.
Oh, and we have a question, yes.
I wanted to ask, in the cost that you like estimated, are the fans included in that cost?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Matter of fact, it's a major cost.
That's the big, I was thinking that way.
The large fan there for the large tube is over $100.
Okay, so we're gonna take the next little bit here. Steve and Scott are going to kind of walk through some of the building of the wind tube elements and talk through a few things, and you can follow along on some of these processes on pages 4, 5, 6, and 7. And we'll take a little time to kind of walk through that. And during this time, feel free to stop and ask questions. This is kind of a hands-on demo type of thing, so just feel free to interrupt, and I'll be following along on the chat and making sure that we get any questions answered along the way.
You give that link out again.
Oh, yeah.
So the wind tube is basically two main parts. You have the fan and, well, 3 main parts. You have the tube itself, you have the stanchion or the base that it stands on, and the fan. And so we'll start with building the wind tube portion itself and walk through that a little bit and show you how you can use that, and roll that together with embroidery hoops, and we'll go from there. The material that I found that is easy to use is, there's a variety of materials, but what I found that's cost effective is what I call cake collar. So if you go to Amazon, for those of you who are bakers, maybe you recognize that. I didn't. I just ran across it, but it's a clear acetate that is used to put around the cake when you're frosting it as you're building up the decorating a cake. And the 12-inch, you can get this in different widths. This is a 12-inch, which is the largest cake collar that you can get. And it comes in 394 inches, which is 10 meters of length. You only need about total of 90 inches for one tube. So one set roll like this will, you can build 4 tubes with one roll. So that's nice to have a little bit extra if you need it. It's like $15 off Amazon. So $15, $16 is not too bad. So what I've done is just to show you to build the tube, we have, as I said, these are in 12-inch sections, and I've stacked three sections on top of each other. So that we end up with a tube which is about 36 inches tall. So to do that, I'll tape one of these, because this is probably one of the most tricky parts. And of course, I'm doing this on a white table.
It's still showing up.
Is it showing up?
Yeah.
Okay, oh, it does. So what I do is I cut three strips of 30 inches each. We'll use 9-inch embroidery hoops, the diameter of 9-inch embroidery hoops, which gives us a circumference of 2 pi r, which is 28 inches, and with about a 2-inch overlap. So you want a little bit of an overlap so you have a good seal. So I just picked 30 inches, and that seems quite adequate. So 30-inch lengths of your cake collar. And then if you look at the guide, you'll may be able to see it better than you can here if you're on the net or on the online. But I overlap the two by about 1/8 of an inch. I line them up so they're flush. Just a small overlap to maximize my height. And I use this Scotch optically clear packing tape that you can get at any local box store. Or U-Haul.
I think you can probably get it up right.
Yeah. And what I do is at that overlap, I gently take a small piece of that packing tape and put a piece right over that overlap, just to kind of tag it, to hold it down. Now, the other thing with the tape, of course, as you know, with sticky tape, when you put your fingerprints on it, it becomes less clear, right? And we want to get this as clear as possible, so try to use the parts where you don't touch, and try to keep your fingerprints as less as possible on the plastic. But the best thing I have found then is once you've tagged it like that and you're holding it, it holds it down, is I kind of take my tape and I center this over the overlap line. And then I extend it past where it is, and I kind of attach it to the table. So it's nicely adhered to the table, so it's not gonna move. And I hold it out. And as I'm pulling it out, I use the flat of my hand to slide it along behind it, trying to prevent any bubbles or creases, right? But you get a nice, see, it's a 2-inch wide tape, and over the top of that, and it makes a nice seal and holds that together. Now, if the first time you do it, or the third or the fifth time, you get a bubble or crease in there, it'll bug you if you're like me. But I've done enough of these that you get to a point where you know the right tension to hold it and how fast to spread it out to be able to keep that from happening.
Also use like a little credit card.
You can use it as a credit card to
Push out the bubbles.
push the bubbles out, right? Flatten it out. And then you can use an X-Acto knife or a utility knife to trim the excess off the table. It would help if I had my glasses.
That's different. Trying to see clear with no glasses. Needing glasses.
One more.
I think I mean, mine are, they're mine over there. Oh, wait. Oh, pocket, what do you know?
Oh, there you go.
What's the use of cargo units? Can't put everything in. So if you can carefully then just, X-Acto knife works really well with this. You can trim the tape off the table to free it. And then you can use a scissors to trim it if it needs to be any closer. But the idea is that you get a nice straight, you can line that over, the overlap shows up pretty nicely. And you can line that up very parallel, so the sheets are parallel and it works pretty well. This cake collar is nice and stiff. Some of the stuff we have used, we actually started with transparency sheets. We had boxes and boxes of old transparency sheets we weren't using. And we taped 12 of those together to do this. That was a lot of taping. But they were thinner and that was a little more problematic than this, which is a little stiffer and holds together much better.
So you don't do both sides, just one side?
No, you don't need to do both sides. You can just do that one side. And I guess that's one thing I should say. I'm doing as I'm pulling it off the roll, this is I'm just rolling it out and it's the inside of the roll. See, and then we'll eventually roll it together like that. So the tape's on the inside. So I've just done 2 sections. What you would do next is to add a 3rd section on top and tape that so that you have 3 sections. And that makes up the body of your cylinder. Scott, if you could grab that over there. To save time.
It's like a cooking show. We just happen to have one here.
Just happen to pull this out of the oven.
Yep. Fresh muffin.
Knew I missed my calling.
It just reminded me of last night. I did a project of, we didn't paint our eggs for Easter. So I pulled the white eggs out of the fridge and I told my daughter, oh, we're gonna paint eggs today as our project. And she goes, well, we need to cook them. I said, they're magically better. That's what it reminded me of last night.
So now we have 3 sheets of 30 inches wide and approximately 36 inches tall. And that's the body of our tube. And what we're going to do is we're going to wrap this around our embroidery hoop, our 9-inch embroidery hoop. So that will make the cylinder the body of our wind tube. Scott will help me. This always works better with 2 people than 1. You can take the embroidery hoop apart. And you have an interior and an exterior part of that hoop.
So it's
You-
2 for the price of 1.
Expand that out. The embroidery hoops, again, you can get those off Amazon. You can Joann's, Hobby Lobby. I'm sure Michael's has them in sizes, but it's a 9-inch for this type of fan. This is the type that we use.
Yeah, so it's locked in. So we're gonna do. We're gonna put the
Woman's work.
So now we're on, this is gonna be interesting on a tiny table. But I think we can roll and pull it a little bit. But with 2 people then, you line up the and I would put the embroidery hoop in about an inch or so you're not right on the edge. So it gives you a little bit of extra room. And then you maintain a little bit of tension on that and then roll that.
That's definitely 2 friends.
Yeah, it's a 2-person thing, yeah.
It definitely is a 2-person. And it takes you a little bit. Takes a little bit to do that. So if it doesn't work, if the hoop falls out the first time, it'll work the 5th time. Patient, that's right. So expand the outer hoop to its largest setting. Or you can even take the nuts off altogether, which actually is often the easier thing to do, and then put it together. And then tighten that down partially until inside. There you go.
Don't go down it.
And this on the outside, there you go.
Did you block?
It's low, it's
Yeah.
loose. That's good. I just took mine all the way off here, that's way. There. So I took the nut all the way off and then for the screw all the way off and then tighten it partially down. You can adjust it to make sure the edges are flush and together. And then slowly inside, outside, you kind of loosen it up enough that so you can each move it. And then slowly work your way to the edge. Again, if you go too far, then it pops off and you just do it again.
Wipe away the tears, try again.
Practice makes perfect. But you want, at least on, it doesn't matter as much on top, but on the bottom, you want that plastic to be at the bottom edge of that embroidery. And then you line them up and lock it and tighten it, and then you have your tube. There you go. And what's nice about that is, like I said, if you have extra plastic and the tube gets creased or it gets crushed, or you're moving from one place to another and it becomes optically unclear, you can always replace the tube and do that again. So that's nice to have that option. So that's the tube itself. The base then is actually another embroidery hoop, which will attach to the fan, and of course I should have a fan, which will sit on top of the fan. And then what we have done is we've taken some 3/8 inch dowel rods, which I just got at Home Depot, and then I cut a notch on either end of those dowel rods, and you can see that much better on the guide. But a small notch, and I have a coping saw. Let's show what the coping saw looks like. I suppose you can use whatever you have best at your disposal, but a coping saw, which has a very fine blade, works really well and is very safe way of doing this. But halfway across your cylinder, cut down 1/8 to 1/4 inch, and then you want to cut perpendicular to that, so you have a notch which is cut out. And the height really doesn't matter. The size of that notch really doesn't matter. What does matter is that the notches on either end are symmetric, that they're the same on the same side. So you want to make sure that that is the case.
One base of the.
But then what you're going to do is your hot glue. Yeah, I use a little bit of hot glue and then I glue it onto the loose embroidery hoop with the extra embroidery hoop. I put another one on opposite of that, and then of course do two perpendicular to those. So you have 4 of those in a row. And then I wonder how long that will take. Should have plugged that in before. We'll see how quickly that takes to heat up. But what I do then is that once these are glued onto this base, then I will put hot glue on the top of each of those notches, and I'm going to glue it right onto the base of this one. So what we end up with is what you see here is this is your tube. You have 3 embroidery hoops, 2 for the tube.
Couldn't clear that over so you can see it on the camera.
Oh. So you have 3 9-inch embroidery, you've used 3 9-inch embroidery hoops, 2 for the tube itself, and then 1 which sits nicely on top of that fan. And you can use then some clear pieces of optical of the tape, or whatever tape you want to tape that onto that fan so it locks it into place, and that's not gonna fall off. What's nice about that is that it's easy to remove the tape, and you could store the fan separately from the tube, or transporting it makes it easy to transport tubes and the fan separately, and from one place to another. If you have multiple of them, that is really nice. Because if you have one end that's really heavy and the top end, it often gets crushed, or it just works much easier if you can separate those. Let's see if we have any. Oh, maybe. Paper towel would be nice. But looks like, yes, right. So I just put hot glue at one end, on one end. And then I just glue that to the outer edge of my embroidery hoop and hold it into place, making sure that's vertical. Hold that vertical. Just takes a couple minutes, and then it'll hold. That's what I love about hot glue. Put another one opposite. And again, if you're a little bit off, that's fine. Thank you. Just in case. And then 90 degrees to this. Once it's dry, if you want to add a little extra hot glue around the edges to lock it in, make sure those are locked into place, that's fine. If they do, hot glue isn't, epoxy would be better to do this, but yeah, hot glue is very easy. If one pops off, it's easy to attach it back on again. So we just found that to be the easiest thing to do.
What's Moxie?
What's that?
Moxie?
Epoxy.
Epoxy, oh.
Yeah, 5-minute epoxy, which will work, and that would certainly hold it much better, but then it takes 5 minutes for it to dry as opposed to just a few seconds.
I was gonna ask, so what did you use for these, are those dowels too, or the wood brown?
So that's one of the differences between the large one and the small one. So those are 1x2 wood stanchions as opposed to the dowel rods. So it's a little bit bigger, since that's an 18-inch embroidery hoop as opposed to the 9-inch. So I just put a little hot glue on all 4 of those. I like to line up the screw so that, and then you're just going to drop that into place, hold it for a few seconds, remove any of the lasting strands of the hot glue, and there you go. Got yourself a wind tube.
All right.
Not too difficult, right? So, and all those parts are readily available, right? The 9-inch embroidery hoops, I don't think I said, you can get those off Amazon, and they come in packs of 12 maybe. I think you can buy them in smaller bulk, but you can, at cheaper prices, you buy them in 12 sets of 12. And you could get them at one of the local stores as well. I'm sure you'll find those. And the wood dowels we just got at Home Depot or any of your hardware stores. And the fans, we put a model number for the fan there. But for the small tube, there are lots of options that are very, very similar. You can find this particular fan, this Honeywell fan, Target, CVS, especially as we're coming into summer. You're going to find that particular fan everywhere in Fresno especially. So that's a pretty popular fan, which is one of the reasons we chose it, is you should be able to find that. Questions? All right, well, that's the build part. I've talked too much. It's time to play. Aileen?
Yeah. So we're ready to start exploring here, and so I'm gonna just briefly talk about the materials we have out, and then you're free to turn on these fans and explore. We're gonna do 10 to 15 minutes, just open exploration, to see what things do, right? And kind of learn from that. And then we'll give some goals, and then we'll try to work toward maybe one of those goals in the next part. So we have some different sizes cups, paper cups, right? Pipe cleaners, right? So this is like a malleable bowl that you can change the shape, see if the shape matters when it's in the wind. Some just really thin kind of fabric here. So what does this do? Think about the things that in our environment that you've seen or in the wind that naturally float, naturally get picked up by the wind, but then things that are man-made, things that are intentionally designed to stay in there or that use wind. Right? There's all sorts of like tape here, different kinds of things like coffee filters, like we're thinking about lighter kind of objects, but how we can even join those together to get some buoyancy as well, right? Okay, any questions? It's kind of like no rules, right? No. Okay, I mean, little kids don't want them in their mouths, but okay, so let's go. Let's explore. There are some things over there already that are.
There are also 3 speeds on your fan, high, medium, and low. So that's another variable you can play with.
That's part of the play experience.
Is that your thing that you brought?
I'll put that on, you can change the speeds.
I probably fit in there. That's my color. Sorry. Wanna guide us?
To guide you? Yeah, no, that's not guiding me. It's just play. What do you think? Have you played with these before? No? You know, yeah.
Looks cool though.
Yeah, so throw some stuff in and see what happens.
This is pretty good.
That's a high stick.
Like this. Eyeball. Like my breast smells like my. Yeah. I ate it really good.
So you guys okay with me doing this? Are you gonna be with me doing this?
So I put it on this one.
It's explore.
You guys want some like marker scissors?
Oh, that sounds pretty much create something.
I would like you to move the.
This one? Wait, this whole thing or just go?
You could, well, you just use this one up here.
Okay. Well, that's what I'm trying to make us now.
Yeah, make like a.
I love this.
Already
I need paper though.
Yeah.
Improvise. You know how many things are taking up borrowing my house?
You don't even matter. I mean, we're happy. Oh, God.
Yeah.
I guess. Give you something to do. But YouTube and time, I could probably do the real way,
Well, that's a good idea.
but hot glue and tape are just as great. For the longest time with my postcard, I drove around with a, oh, you made a.
My last set too.
You had to go out too.
Or are you trying to figure out how to get those to?
Yeah, because
She got it, so it's gonna fly like that.
So we all need to wear knitted clothes.
What about with one of these? This one's the-
Oh, yeah.
that's the best. That was the best.
Like that under. Then you put it
Hello?
towards the top. Just going higher.
Well, the bag flew all the way out. That piece of wood. I just.
I wonder why it's stuck to the side.
That's why you're.
Your foot.
Static.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
They don't dry. Oh, that's cool.
See me. Oh, is that you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, nice.
Yeah, I need to be lighter.
All right, we have ladders.
Oh,
So, what I was thinking, this would make a great
well,
lesson.
so you don't necessarily need to make it
And
lighter,
start off
you
with
could
the
add some
building
things
process,
to help it
We're
fly.
talking about it, subject, and then the
Where'd my
building
wing go?
process, and then keeping it stationary on the floor first, talking
Yeah.
about gravity and how gravity pulls things down. And then modifying gravity. Do me a favor, not the. Only I could tell my teachers what to do.
Balancing forces.
They always stick to the same set. Let's do spring. Let's do winter. Let's do. How about fine motor skills? There's so much you can teach on fine motor skills.
My little bug. Oh, so cute. Oh, that's a good idea to use that for like.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, your butterfly is gonna carry a message. But I think it's because you don't have your pipe cleaner evenly. Yeah,
Sorry about the.
I know, there's a lot of things I make are crooked. I don't measure. I know when I was telling him, I was like, when I was watching him. But when I was watching him, I was like, I'm not measuring none of that.
Look at my little bug.
Grab some clearness. Get some
Then you
wood.
get your virus. Like, it's like a lot of my bug. Oh, look at that.
It reminds me of.
You were like.
You wanna buy it?
A lot of them are called the little ball.
That quick?
Oh, badminton, yeah. Wiffle ball.
That's a good-
But I don't know.
Well, you know, you
You have to make it flat.
Alright.
So this currently doesn't belong. How do you think you would make it?
This is my version of our.
I like that.
Did you say higher for them?
Otro de esos.
It's like that little chick that.
Oh, I guess I should have made.
Mrs. You be sure my spring should.
Well, you could go ask
I did it. It's the first one. You were talking for ranch. She got 50.
Oh my God, I cut myself so badly.
Oh my God.
I think you meant
Back together just to pause for just one moment. There are probably two things you're noticing. You're probably noticing that the wind tunnel can act as a source of projecting something. So if you put something in the wind tunnel, then it will fly out, right? But if you put something in the wind tunnel, sometimes it just stays there, static, right? Those are two great goals for kids to say, okay, what can we make that will, be launched out and float down? Or what can we make that will stay inside the longest, right? Some of you I see making goals of carrying something else. Like I want this to carry something else in the winter. So making something that can transport something, right? That's loose inside. So kind of think about a goal that you would like to work towards, maybe getting something to project out and then float in the air the longest, something like a parachute kind of thing. Or maybe something that floats inside and stays stable for a long time. There was something in here that was spinning. So we were getting a different motion, not just floating statically, but also spinning it. So there's different goals that you can work towards. Think about one you'd like to work towards together, and then we'll come back and reflect on it.
So we're all making higher, but it's a parachute.
I don't think that's in a flag.
That's heavy.
Butterfly came
That's what I coming up. Get out that actually.
That's why they won't let me in.
Literally streamlining.
What?
Did they all?
I like this one. It reminds me of the little parachute guy.
I was thinking about it now. I'm not. This is my kids have accidents.
Heavy bones.
That ball is so stubborn.
That's so great.
Would you do that?
Oh, thank you.
Straw.
I might place there, yeah, also a little, they didn't get those, right?
It was like my. Yeah, you went.
Here, look at that. Oh, wait.
I wanna put some.
To my hair?
Yeah. And my ball, cause my whole goal is about my ball. Nothing else, the whole goal is the ball.
Do I have to be happy?
I need a boy.
Yeah.
I do.
Stays flying.
Yeah, let me take my. I've been seeing. Well, that's not enough weight. I tried. I wanted to stay like her. Maybe.
In the right arrow. Surely that would come up.
Trying to figure out how much weight.
Good dimension, you got it.
I wonder if it's because it has less wind resistance than this parachute, so it.
No, I'm trying to get it to stay too, but mine keeps flying out.
Music here for your.
I know, right?
You'll get our mouse.
That's what I hear the other day in line. I'm so old.
Let's try
I was born in 2000.
This was that.
Sure.
Come here.
Come here.
He was the shit.
You figured out some tosses.
All the way. Do it the other way.
After you try to see if you can get something heavy,
Yeah, put up with that.
you have to attach stuff.
I'm like, you were born in the 1900s? Good job.
That was the far away.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's because it's not even. They go to one side.
Right here, what?
Oh, I love it.
Very good to see you doing.
On us too then. He's like, my feather or whatever that, my coffee filter is, I need a parachute.
I'm gonna try to upside down.
Look it, it's
I
not the
took them out
same
of the
effect when it's upside down.
Well,
A whole different effect.
that's something you.
It's because,
That's not.
you see, the wind resistance greater, just like with the balloon. The resistance, has a bigger mass. This one, the small mass, so there's no difference. It's a bigger mass.
This one.
This one over here, you can see a little bit of.
I don't know how to explain it, that's what I'm curious about teacher.
Well, then, as it spins, it changes the center mass. The lower one tries to counterbalance.
That's what you're seeing, baby.
Yeah, but there's.
You put a glow in the dark dot on both of those and watch those at night. Oh, look at that. Parachute for it.
Oh, no. Do it again, do it again.
Like fitting.
It's so creative, I'm not creative.
Small objects in my pocket.
Huh?
That's one.
Oh, I was like,
Oh, I know.
but the words of Steve.
To the middle.
I do little things.
Oh, look, there's our first thing. We've collected.
Landed on the line. Come on, Natalia.
We've got to keep that.
What's going on with your parachute? Why does it half in, half out?
That was my bug. It's been like that. No, my bug is not gonna get it.
I just make it just for me. I know.
No, it was flying up earlier.
Well, no, it's staying in the field.
I mean,
If I had a
I know,
rubber-
that's what that's stuff like that. No, that's not what this, he does, he is standing up now.
So as we can just keep, we're playing, someone online has requested a particular goal. Can someone get their name badge to float in the challenge?
I
The evil laugh. I can't.
No, give me your badge too.
Fine.
Your badge too.
Oh, no, stay in the same.
I got you, got you.
You and the balloon.
What do
you have in your badge?
Wonder if that would work if you attach it to the.
I think this is one I keep in my career.
But like,
Another wonderful question from online, from Stephanie is, can you make something that stays in the tube but spins?
Oh, yeah, we had the butterfly.
But it comes out.
Oh.
Because they want it to stay there.
They won't go up.
Is that the one that does?
This one stays in the
Oh, yeah.
Name badge?
But it was there.
Yeah.
Take it.
The name badge floated for a while.
We take that.
There you go.
Something that
wait,
spins.
can I use the scissors?
Oh, I thought we were doing the badge thing.
That too.
Well, there are a couple challenges. Name badge and something that.
Right, come on, taking photos. Look at it, we go live.
No, I don't know, you did it, it was amazing.
Is there tape?
Well, you're like,
Oh.
well, his arms. No.
That was so heavy.
What's the arm?
What if?
Oh, look, you look at it, look like this.
Oh, well, the name badge is loaded out.
There you go.
Now we just gotta get.
What's going on?
So that kind of sense.
I know, it's big.
Oh, cute. I think we could put an update on. Why did you do that? Spin and stay.
We're spinning. So you do it.
That's good.
Hey,
Oh, wait, let me have my bug can spin. So then flies. And it carry my bug.
I know.
Okay.
Let me see if you're, put it through the bottom again.
So as you're doing this, think about seeds. What seeds fly? How do they fly? I see some representation of seeds. Just entering dandelion season.
Spinner.
Yeah.
Where
are those? Oh, I'm sure my arm was hurting.
I swear.
Did we have to lift it closer, lift it closer?
Oh, yeah.
I was like that. Oh, that's nice. There you go. There you go, you figured it out. Lift it closer. See, we got control of our wind.
You obtained the win.
We've tamed it.
I got it, look, it spins. There you go. There's a spinner.
I'll take those pictures.
Oh.
There you go. The fairies. What is it? It's like a it's like
I did it, but I like
a-
Oh, look at that spin. There you go.
I heard that, yeah.
Oh, yeah, what happens when they cover the wind?
Keep them in the- I'll just move that. Cover them.
Did it 80.
What if you put a ball in? Alright, let's take one more.
Wait.
No, wait, it's not. They all discovered.
There's some, no, go over
There's-
there.
there's-
Yeah,
There you go.
the red one. And the blue one. He's like, no. You do it, I'm not going.
Well, you can't
I was
cover all of
trying.
it.
He's like, ah.
I think I don't like this one.
No, look, make a circle. Lucky, because come on.
Oh, wait, is it not? Oh, I need some. I need some.
Oh.
That's how we were controlling it. I don't know if that'll happen again.
Video doesn't count.
Right? Let it drop, see if it at a slow fall.
That's too
Or turn it off. The balloons.
Okay. I'll have to pick it up.
Turn it off and then we would. Scores. I'll come down. I don't even know how that happened.
Hanging out.
It sounds like so and the little she's speaking.
That worked. We didn't even have to do that.
Or they keep you. I think you might be blocking.
Let me.
Hold on, I wanna know.
Oh, the
Oh, maybe.
static. You think the static is what's keeping it down? Yeah, it has to be the static of the other. Then it wouldn't fit.
All right, so sorry. If you can find your seats again, we'll do a quick reflection.
Oh, this is gonna pick these up. I'm gonna get charged for my next one, because this is really like. My second one. The last one. I know it now, I just don't remember. So, it was.
That was really just like 30 minutes of play for you guys. Did it feel like it went fast? Yeah. Okay. So what kind of aha moments or aspects of that play session would you want to share with, especially those who are online, observing?
You're gonna make it spin. For me, it was like, wow, I can do that, I just had to put weight on one side, more than the other.
Okay.
And then the rest had to be evened out, like, what is that, the coffee? Thing?
The coffee filters? Okay.
Like a black flag, and then we made one side heavier, and that I still made it to twist.
Okay. So maybe experimenting with different things you wanted to do, like spinning. And the idea of balance, right? Like having something off balance can affect the movement.
I think a combination of items, like for instance, I tried something that I wouldn't move, it wouldn't lift, but then when I added other items, it just took off.
So trying different combinations, yes. So think about that as you're preparing stations, that there'll be some things that don't float on their own, right, with the wind, but then in combination with something else can actually provide some point, floating or lifting. I heard a lot of vocabulary. Isn't there a lot of vocabulary that you were using to describe what was happening or to also predict why it was happening? Maybe it's too heavy. Wind resistance, things that maybe kids won't have the words yet, but they'll try to describe, like, that's really smooth, but this is rough, and words that we can introduce that have more meaning because they're actually engaging with that phenomenon that's happening in the moment. Right? Something that's heavy, something that's light. Have any observations from those from online that they want to share? Reflections of what you saw? I think that there was a lot of collaboration, even if people were working on different goals. Like I saw people sharing ideas of what to try, or vocalizing your thinking out loud with your team. That seemed really organic that was happening. So we probably will see that with kids. They'll be talking about what they're thinking. We're giving each other suggestions of what might work or what to try. Oh, yes, you're on mute. Thank you, everyone.
Just a couple connections here that I think are interesting. As we think about, not only did this activity engage us in play and exploration, but really what are some of the ideas that are being explored here? And there are lots of ideas. One in particular comes from the sciences and the preschool learning foundations. And so young children get to explore a variety of different materials and objects that are sort of core to the earth and to being on this planet. Things like the size, the weight, the shape, the color, and texture of materials like sand, rock, soil, water, and in particular, and air. So there's a lot that has to do with flight and how things float and oh, it feels windy today, or look at these things that are flying in the air. So just a lot of opportunities to connect to that. In addition to that, from the foundations is an example of sort of changing materials to accomplish a particular goal. And sort of, Juan, as you were saying, you know, you added something to something heavy in order to make it fly. And it was kind of funny that you could add something to a heavy object and it would then make it fly, like a scarf or or pipe cleaner. This is an example from the foundations where a child constructs an airplane by using pipe cleaners and communicates to his friend, I made an airplane, but now I'm going to make something else. And he converts it into a spaceship by tweaking and bending the pipe cleaners and rearranging their configuration. So there's a lot there that I think is, you know, opportunities for children to construct, for families to work together to construct things, but then to sort of change them up as they explore those things. So other things that we'd like to sort of highlight and connect, I want to share a couple other resources from the guide. In particular, if you are following along, we'll look at page 13 on that guide. And it's just like with our previous exhibit of the light and shadow. We really believe strongly in the connection to literature and to storytelling. And some of our colleagues online gave us some prompts and challenges. Make something that spins, or make something that will carry your name badge. You also might think about stories that have to do with wind. Like some of you, I think, created some characters. There was a parachute person over here. There was a wonderful parachute person over here who was like having the time of its life floating around in that tube. Maybe there's a story that goes along with this, or create a story. There were other characters with googly eyes and creatures that were created in Cube. And lots of fun stories that could either be told or created, or connected to other literature. This is a great story about Gilbert and the wind and kind of how he experiences that. There are other literature connections that we encourage you to explore. We have a few of those that are shared on page 13 in the guide. You, of course, are welcome to find your own books that may connect to that and encourage families to share a story about wind together. And we also really want to encourage these explorations to go beyond the wind tube and to find ways to connect to outdoor. So on page 14, you see outdoor connections. Going outside on a scavenger hunt for wind and flying objects. Maybe there's flying seeds like Steve was talking about, or leaves that fall and how they fly or spin to the ground, or flying machines that you may see up in the air. How do they fly, or what do you think makes them fly? In addition, of course, dandelion seeds are a wonderful thing to play with and to blow and to kind of see how those flow. Other ideas or comments? Yes.
I know sorry, I was in the restroom. I know when we were exploring over here, because we've got missions and somebody gave me a mission, I'm gonna work on that mission. So the mission was to get something to stay floating and spinning. And it wasn't my object I made, and I knew my object wasn't gonna do it because my object wasn't meant for that. But I seen her object doing something earlier, so I grabbed a piece of paper and controlled the wind. And we got it to stay and spin.
Yeah, there was even ways to sort of control the wind, and I don't know if those of you who are watching online noticed that some groups kind of covered the top of the tube to control how much wind was getting pulled through it, and that changed the flight pattern of the object inside the tube, which is kind of an interesting thing to do, but a neat way to control that wind. The fans also have different speeds, and so it might be that you play it up, turn it up higher, turn it lower, to sort of control those different variables that are affecting how that object is flying. Yeah, it's a great point.
I even noticed, I noticed that even adding it from the top made a huge difference, rather than the bottom.
Yeah.
Making it on top.
Yeah.
Stay, but when you put it on the bottom, then it won't stay.
Yeah, right. So is there more force of wind right near the fan compared to up here, right? And that may affect how things fly or don't fly. Yeah, great point. These are wonderful things to observe, and we encourage you all to continue to observe these things in your own settings. So on page 15, we have a section called Observation and Feedback. This is a wonderful time for you to observe families as they interact and play with the wind tube, and you can use some of these questions to really guide your own adaptations. You might decide that you need to add some kind of material that is interesting to the tube. You might, we've tried actual leaves and things from the environments outdoors, actual natural materials. You might find other things that people bring in from home that they want to try and make their own creations. So a couple questions here that we encourage you to think about are, what materials seem to be working well? What are some other materials you might consider using? And how are adults and caregivers engaging alongside children? And how could the exhibit encourage more co-play between children and adults? If you see adults or caregivers kind of standing back and only kids playing, how would you encourage them to hey, try something alongside your child, or to try something together, and maybe it's a challenge where it's a challenge and the adult could read the challenge and the child could work together with the adult. So we encourage you to think about ways to sort of support that balanced partnership between the adults and children. The final couple pages of the guide have resources. This is where you can get the materials, some suggested places to get the things that we've demonstrated today, as well as a place where you can print out some posters. One of the things that we also have available is a display area sign. And that display area sign looks like this, and it's just kind of a nice thing to share. It says, share your flying creations here. So after families have made things, sometimes it's fun to just share, sometimes it's fun to have them share them so that others can get ideas. And I know I would love to play with this flying person over here with the parachute. So, and they can kind of like create like an idea for someone to build something else. So that's an option there that you can set up and place somewhere in the area where you have your exhibit. The Lighthouse Center for Children here in Fresno, this wind tube was set up in the lobby. So as parents came and dropped off kids and then left, there would sometimes be 5 minutes for them to just come and play a little bit. At EPU, I know that it's also set up in a space where children can play with it in kind of a nice open space. It could also be used on a family night or as a station that could be used during a maker fair or during some kind of during a family celebration of some sort. So be creative, find different ways that you can use this. It is not indestructible. It will fall apart. And it will tip over, or this, as you can tell, it's like the acetate is thin. So it also requires a little bit of TLC. So once in a while you go over, you might have to adjust it a little bit, or reattach a part, or add a little bit of glue. That's just pretty natural and it happens with these kinds of things, especially when they're well used and played with. We really would love to support your steps going forward. So if you feel like, oh, would really love a wind tube, but we're not quite sure where to start or how to go about it, would you sign up for a coaching session with Ames? We have a great little spot online where you could sign up for that. I'll share that link with you now. And we would love to just really help you get this up and running. So let us know what we can do to help. There's a link here at the bottom, aimcenter.as.me, and then it's Kami Coaching. And we'd be happy to help out. If there are materials that you also feel like, oh, we're not sure about these dowels and cutting these dowels and things, send us an email or send us a note and we can create some of these things and send them to you. If you're not here locally, we can put them in a box and ship them to you if that's needed. We want there to be no barrier for you to set this up and to get it up and running. So if you want a one-on-one demo session or you want to get materials and bring them here, we can have a make day. We're more than willing to do that. So whatever we need to do to support your work and to support this exhibit building. I'll pause there. We have just a couple minutes left. Are there any other questions or comments or anything that anyone would like to add either here in person or from online? Feel free to unmute and ask questions. Okay. Well, again, on behalf of the Ames team and all of our CPE partners, we just thank you for being here. Thanks for joining us. Our next session will be on May 7 from 2 to 3:30. And our third exhibit is called Sensing Sand, and it's around playful exploration with kinetic sand and some different things that we can do with that. So hopefully you will join us. We are also really curious about how you are going to implement and how these things are going in your own settings. And we'd love for you to share pictures and stories about that. So we're going to be setting up a Padlet, which is an online website where we can all add our own photos and stories to it. And just to sort of share how things are going and we can learn from each other with that. So that will be emailed out to you in a little bit. So watch your email for that Padlet. Okay, well, thank you everyone for being here. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Session hopefully.
It's probably helpful if you have because we're gonna be just elementary.
Thank you. Maybe have a board next to you. No, it's at home. At home.
Yes.